Hi students, this is Mrs. Wendt, and this is Biochemistry Notes Part 4, which is proteins and nucleic acids. They're both kind of short, so we will do them together. There are also two groups of molecules that you're going to see a lot of later on in the biology school year as well. We talk about proteins a lot with their connection to DNA and how we build proteins. And nucleic acids is DNA. So we do talk a lot about the job of DNA and how DNA gets passed down from parents to children. So you're going to see these guys a lot later in the year. So this is just going to be a tiny introduction to what kind of atoms they are made of and how the atoms are fit together. We'll talk about their jobs a lot more detail later. Okay. So if you're doing the fill-in-the-blank notes, this starts at the top of the third page. If you're writing in your notebook, that's fine. Go ahead and get your notebook out. Okay, so we're going to start with proteins. And proteins are organic compounds. So remember, we had this vocab word on the first page of our notes. Everything organic has carbon and hydrogen. Proteins have both of those, but we're also going to add nitrogen. And this is the first molecule we've talked about that's added nitrogen atoms. And the symbol for nitrogen is letter N, so you'll see that appear. And proteins are really important. They are construction materials. So they're used to build things. So if you're going to build a house, you would need nails, wood, concrete to build a house. Proteins are the nails and wood and concrete that build all your body parts, like your hair, your skin, your fingernails, your blood, okay? Your muscles, your bones. All of your body parts have protein in them. Okay, now the building blocks for proteins, just like the carbohydrates and lipids we talked about, there's little pieces called monomers. And for proteins, the monomers are called amino acids. Okay, so just like our sugars we talked about, they just kind of chain up together. So this purple strand here has 4 amino acids. I also have a blue strand and a red strand here. And what these actually do is these different strands will twist up and then twist together to build things. So this structure, all the different ways you can twist things together, can make all of your different body parts and all the jobs they do. Okay, now each little dot here represents an amino acid, and there's actually 20 different amino acids that your human body uses. Okay, so all of these purple ones, they might all be the same amino acid, or they might all be different from each other, like different ingredients if you're building a sandwich. Oh, sorry about the shaking there, guys. Don't know what that was all about. Now, there's another important group of proteins we're going to talk about more in a couple days. We actually have a packet on these guys called enzymes. And enzymes help control chemical reactions by acting as a catalyst. So a catalyst is a good chemistry term. In physical science, you did a lab with a catalyst. You'll do more catalyst labs in chemistry class if you haven't had that yet. And what a catalyst does, it speeds up reactions by lowering what's called the activation energy. So how much energy you need to start a chemical reaction. So if you think back to some chemistry you've done in a lab before, or even when you're cooking, lots of times you have to add heat for things to happen. If you want to cook eggs, you have to add heat. A lot of chemistry labs, we heat up test tubes or heat up things using a hot plate or a Bunsen burner, okay? If I add a catalyst, we will get the same reaction with less heat or less energy, okay? So you have a lot of enzymes in your body that do that. They help chemical reactions happen quickly and with less energy, and that's good because you guys know your body doesn't work really good if your body temperature gets too hot. If you get a fever of like 100 degrees, 102 degrees, that heat makes you feel crummy. So these catalysts, one little tiny thing they do is just help keep your body temperature the same so you feel good. Okay, but if you think about all the chemical reactions in your body, all the food you eat that has to be broken down and digested, all the oxygen you breathe in that has to be used in your body, all the waste that you breathe out or go to the bathroom and get rid of, right? There's chemical reactions all the time. So these catalysts called enzymes are very important, okay? So these are a group of proteins. So enzymes are made this same way with amino acids. They just have really important jobs in your body. So we're going to learn more about enzymes in a couple days. I just want you to connect to the idea that an enzyme is a kind of protein. So enzymes are also made of amino acids. Okay. Now, if I'm going to connect two amino acids together, just like connecting two little sugars together, I have to remove a water. And for some reason, when we do this with proteins, we give it a new name. We call it a peptide bond. All right. So I'm going to kind of cheat here. I'm going to grab a pen. And this is going to be really messy. I apologize here, guys. But if I want to connect these guys together, I can take the OH off of this first amino acid. And I can take one of these H's off of here and kind of, change that and pull one of those H's off. And now there's an open connection right here off the C. There's going to be an open connection off the end. And you can see right here at the bottom, that C and the N are now connected together. And off to the side, we're going to have that extra water that we pulled off to make that bond happen. So that's dehydration synthesis, just like what we did before. Another picture that looks kind of nice over on your right or the left side as well. Okay. So putting these guys together and taking them apart uses the same steps we learned before, dehydration synthesis and hydrolysis. The only difference is this new connection we made is called a peptide bond. That's not a really, really super important vocab word. It does show up on one of your worksheets. So I just wanted to point that out to you. And if you go into any kind of chemistry in college or advanced biology in college, you'll see that word a lot. Okay, so, but it's the same, taking little pieces, pull the water away, connect them to make bigger things. Same thing that you guys have been seeing with all of the other reactions that we've done. Okay, so you don't need to sketch that in your notes. If you want to, you can pause the video and you can, but you won't have to memorize like where all these atoms are and how they're connected. What I'm hoping is if I show you a picture like this one and say what's happening here, you could say, oh, they took a water away, now they're connected. So you could label this picture down here, dehydration synthesis, because you can see they're taking water out and now things are connected. Okay, so you're never going to have to draw a picture like this from me in biology class, but if I give you a picture, can you tell me about it, about what's going on? That's what I would like you to be able to do. All right, now proteins. They do a lot of important jobs in your body, and they work because of their shape. I am not entirely sure this sentence is on your fill-in-the-blank notes, so if it's not, please add it. This is really important. All of those different amino acids twisted together make lots of different shapes, and every job in your body is going to need to use a different kind of shape. Okay. So, different shapes for different jobs. Is that protein carrying oxygen? Is that protein part of a muscle for lifting? Is that protein used to digest food? Whatever it does. Whatever shape it has a different job to match the shape. Just like the tools in your house, the shape of a screwdriver has the job of putting in screws. The shape of a hammer has the job of pounding nails. The shape of a saw has the job of cutting. Okay, so just like the tools in your house, proteins all have different shapes for their different jobs. Okay, now this is something, if you like to cook, you maybe know about, but you've never thought about it that hard. If you heat proteins up All right, so put them on the grill, put them in the microwave, put them in a pan like you're cooking them. Some of the proteins are going to kind of change shape. And this also happens with some chemicals too. Okay, so there's some cooking techniques where instead of using heat to cook with, some chefs will use like acid. And if you put the acid on the meat, it acts like it's cooking the meat. It'll kill all the bacteria and it will kind of melt some of those protein shapes. That'll soften it and make it easier to chew. Okay, so if proteins get too warm or if they're exposed to some chemicals, they don't work. They don't do the job anymore. Okay, so if you think about a screwdriver, if it melts, it doesn't have the right shape to fit in the screw and it's not going to work anymore. Okay, so lots of times we see this when we're cooking food. We cook the food and it's easier to chew, it's easier to cut, it's kind of melted and softened a little bit. And so we end up cooking a lot of the proteins we eat because of that. Okay, but you also have to remember the proteins in your body, if they get too hot, they're not going to work so great anymore either. And again, if your body gets way too hot, way too high of a temperature or a fever, that could happen to you as well. Okay. There's a lot of really cool labs we can do with this, but even before distance learning, we just didn't have time to kind of do all the things. But if you're interested in more, think about taking the concurrent biology class. You get college credit. You can still take it as an elective, even if you had regular biology, but you can take it for college credit and do some more labs, and this is one of them. All right, this you do not have to write down. I just want to introduce it to you so you've seen it. Okay, so this first layer here, you can see this is a protein, and here's all the little individual amino acids that are all hooked together. So every piece we hook on here was a dehydration synthesis reaction. So your body will make lots of these long pieces, but this is not a full protein. After you make this, then it gets all twisted up, and then that twisted up part will get twisted up again, and then this piece that we made will twist up with other pieces made by other parts of your body. Okay, so it's kind of a complicated building system, but it allows you to make lots of different kinds of parts to do lots of different jobs in your body. Okay, you're going to see this shape again later this year when we talk about building proteins using DNA. Okay, so we'll see this again. I just wanted to introduce it to you today. All right, so that's all for proteins. The biggest thing we want you to know about proteins is that amino acids are the name of the little building blocks, and that proteins are put together exactly the same way as the other ones that we've talked about so far. And this last one, nucleic acids, again, they're put together the same way. Dehydration synthesis will build them together. Hydrolysis will pull them apart. Okay, so nucleic acids is a special group of macromolecules. They store genetic information. So it's like a computer chip. It has all kinds of information for how to build your body parts, how to build a blood cell, how to build an arm, how to build black hair or freckles or anything that your body has. Okay, all that information is stored in this chemical. So that's a pretty amazing thing. Okay, the little monomers that make up nucleic acids are called nucleotides. So you see that, and the beginnings are similar. So that's a way to kind of put those guys together. So nucleotides are the monomers. And a nucleotide is actually a little different than the other ones we talked about. It has 3 specific parts. And we are definitely going to talk about these later in the year also. So if you learn them now and remember them now, your genetics unit will go a lot easier. Okay, but if it doesn't all sync right away now, you will see this again. Okay, so nucleotide has a sugar, And the name of that sugar is pentose. Remember, anything with a "-ose" ending is a sugar. And pent means 5, like a pentagon. Okay, so it's going to be a pentagon shape. There's going to be what we call a base. And the base has a bunch of nitrogen in it. So just like the proteins had nitrogen, these guys too. And then there's one more piece that we use to connect things together, and that's a phosphate. And a phosphate is a phosphorus atom, and it's connected to 4 oxygen atoms. So this is the first time we've seen a phosphorus atom in our list of stuff. So that makes nucleic acids a little different. They're the only ones that have this phosphate. All right. So every nucleotide, every little building block has these 3 parts. And every textbook I've ever seen in my life shows them pretty much built the same way. So if you can recognize these shapes, they're going to look just like this in your college textbook too. Okay, so an example of a nucleotide, we use these to build DNA. So the really simple shape way is we make the phosphate a circle. The pentose is a pentagon shape, that's our sugar. And the nitrogen base is a rectangle. Okay, and for whatever reason, every textbook in the universe does it this way. And this is one nucleotide, so I can take another one of these and connect it up here, and so forth and so on. If you want to get really technical, this is what all the atoms look like inside all those pieces. So that phosphate, it's a phosphorus atom with 4 oxygens around it. And then we also have our sugar. There's every corner of the pentagon is a letter C. That's hard to see here. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sugars, just really similar to our glucose and our galactose that we talked about before. And then our nitrogen base, there's the nitrogen atoms in there, along with some carbon and some other things to connect everything together. Okay, so if you can remember these shapes as being a nucleotide, that's really helpful to help us with genetics later on. So they all have a phosphate, a sugar, and a base. Okay, so if you have a picture like that in your notes, I believe if you could kind of label the parts, if they're not already labeled, that would be awesome. And you do not have to memorize where the atoms are. This picture over here is all the more detailed we're going to get. All right, so what do nucleic acids build? Okay, there's 3 main things your body uses nucleic acids for building. First one is DNA, and the letters DNA are short for this big guy here, deoxyribonucleic acid. Okay, and each little prefix piece means something in chemistry. We're not going to worry about that. It is an acid, like if you talk about acids and bases. So it has a low pH if you stick some pH paper in it, but that's not a big deal. All right. DNA is the genetic information inside the nucleus of your cells. We will talk more about the nucleus of cells next week. That's our next unit. So basically, it's an instruction book. How do you build stuff? Okay. What are the directions we need to build a new bone cell or a new blood cell? That's what that's all about. All right, now we also build something very similar called RNA. Now we will go into the details about how RNA and DNA are similar and different later this year. But RNA is like a copy of DNA. So the DNA stays safe inside the nucleus. The RNA copy leaves the nucleus and goes out to build stuff somewhere else. Okay, so these 2 things have a lot in common, but they are not identical. We will worry about what they have different about them later. Then the third one is one that we talk about a lot in our energy unit. Okay, and that is ATP. And those 3 letters stand for adenosine triphosphate. And tri means 3. Okay. And the picture of this looks a little different than DNA and RNA because instead of one phosphate, we're going to have three. So it looks like this. Okay, so it's the same pentagon sugar, the same nitrogen base, but instead of one circle for phosphate, there's actually three of them. And these extra connections where these phosphates are actually hold a lot of energy. And this is how your body stores energy to be used later. So this chemical is super important. We're going to talk about it a lot in our energy unit. Okay, but you should know it is a nucleic acid, the same kind of chemicals made with your DNA and your RNA. So we want you just to kind of recognize the shape of it and what it's made of. And if you can remember that ATP is for energy, that is huge. That's going to help you a lot in the future. All right. So a couple quick pictures here, guys. You do not have to sketch any of this. Over here, this black background here, this is kind of a traditional DNA picture. It's got this spiral shape. And the different colors inside, each color is a different nucleotide. So you can see there's a lot of them connected together. Here's kind of another version of nucleotides getting connected together. And they are put together by removing water, just like dehydration synthesis, like all the other chemical reactions that we've talked about. All right. So that is the end of this notes packet. We got an introduction to macromolecules. You got a day where we talked about carbohydrates, a day when we talked about lipids, and then today you did nucleic acids and proteins. Okay, so now you have all the notes filled in. The last page of the packet is a review of all the notes. So there's some checklists where you can compare things and see how the different macromolecules are the same and different. So you should work on that review sheet now, and whatever things you can't figure out, please ask. Okay. And if there's any blanks on your notes, maybe get together with a friend and see if they have the blanks that you're missing, or go back and rewatch the videos. Okay. Now, there was 2 other assignments that we worked on in between taking notes this week. That was the Building Macromolecules worksheet. So I introduced that on Tuesday. We talked a little bit more about it on Thursday if you're in my fall of 2020 class, distance learning. Okay, so that guy you need to finish up and hand in if you haven't. And the other one that goes with these notes is the worksheet Macromolecules in My Food. Now that you've had all the notes, some of the things on these worksheets that maybe didn't make sense before are going to make more sense. Okay, so please use the rest of the time you have for work time today to take care of these 3 items and hand in your notes when you are done. Okay, so that's all for this video. Have a great day, guys, and get to work.